Polylingual medicine. The hurdles, the pitfalls, and the joys of polylingual medicine in Switzerland. Hello and welcome to the channel. Following on from my last video where I discussed the psychology of the doctor-patient relationship, at least from my point of view, I go deeper in today's video and delve into a specific aspect of Swiss medicine. If you have watched some of my videos, you will know that I work in Switzerland, in the canton of Bern to be exact. As you may well know, Switzerland is a country of many languages, having input from surrounding countries Germany, France, Italy, Liechtenstein and Austria. Switzerland is a comparatively small country with only 41,000 square kilometers in size and 8.9 million inhabitants. You could fit 6 Switzerlands into the UK geographically and all of Switzerland into London population-wise. But somehow, living here, I don't feel it to be a small country at all. I think one reason for this is the diversity of language and culture here. I feel like I live in 4 different countries. If you take a train through Switzerland, one of the charming side effects of such a journey is not only the switch from one language to another, but also the change in the order of the language of the announcements, with the language of the present place taking precedence. To give context, there are 4 official languages in Switzerland, and English is not one of them. English is, of course, widely spoken in Switzerland and is a kind of an unofficial 5th language, closely followed by Spanish, Portuguese, and Albanian. The 4 official languages are German, spoken by just over 60%, followed by French, just over 20%, Italian, just under 10%, and Romansh, around 1%. Romansh is a cute Latin language, mostly spoken in the mountainous regions of Switzerland and Italy, and is an official language of the canton of Graubünden, or in French, Grison, or in Italian, Grigioni, in which you would find the rather swish ski resort of St. Moritz. This language, Romansh, is being actively taught and promoted in the schools there to keep it going for fear of losing it altogether. I find it to be a beautiful language, like all Latin languages are. Romansh was brought over to Graubünden by Roman soldiers in 15 BC. Back to our train journey. If you start in Geneva, the train announcements will be in French first, and then German, then Italian, and then English. By the time you roll into Zurich, you would hear German first, then French, then Italian, and then English. If you end up in Lugano, it will be Italian, then German, then French, and then English. Strangely enough, when you are deep in the Alps of southeastern Switzerland, in the valleys of Engadin, again St. Moritz, and Poschiavo, they drop the French and keep English. I wonder if they have had complaints from the French about this. I shall explain further on in this video about why this might be the case. Keep watching. People often ask me what medicine in Switzerland is like. Well, the practice of medicine is very diverse, much like the politics of Switzerland, which is very much decentralized. Every canton, and there are 26 of them, has its own rules. What I can tell you is that language is very important in each canton, as I guess is to be expected, right? Naturally, doctors must be proficient in the language of the canton, with language tests often being a prerequisite for a job offer in a hospital or clinic. In cantons with 2 or 3 official languages, the doctor is required to be bi or trilingual, often quadrilingual when you add English into the mix. It's just a way of life here. You would expect your waitress in a restaurant or bar, or the electrician or the plumber to be similarly polylingual, as it is often also a professional requirement of theirs. There is a strange relationship with English which I fail to understand fully. I get that English is a very widely spoken international language, sure, but you could say the same for Spanish or Chinese. Now, English is not an official language here, but most medical specialty board exams are conducted in English, which surprised me no end. But then again, maybe it makes sense because to unify the whole of Switzerland, it makes sense to pick some sort of lingua franca. And why not English, since many journal articles, scientific studies are published in English. The enforcement of the English requirement is to such an extent that seems borderline unreasonable. Let me give you a current example. A Ukrainian doctor is being threatened to be kicked out of the medical profession in Switzerland because he is not English speaking and therefore can't take the board exam. Never mind that he speaks Russian, Polish, Portuguese and German fluently, in addition to obviously the Ukrainian language. And none of his patients is complaining anyway because he works in a German-only canton and his German is perfect. Such is the strict rule for English for Swiss doctors. In any polylingual society, one of the unwritten rules is which language are we going to speak together? Being, of course, from a monolingual country, the UK, I was not used to this ritual when I first encountered it in Switzerland. I found it rather charming and amusing at first, but now I do it automatically and it makes perfect sense. Because you really cannot guess on first meeting a polyglot what language you think they might choose to speak with you. You can't guess from their name. Swiss names are usually a mishmash of first and surnames from multiple languages anyway. So a Bruno Schmidt or Sylvain Siegenthaler is a common finding. But even if both the first name and the surname come from the same language, there is no guarantee that the first language of that person, their mother tongue, matches the language. The let's agree which language we're going to speak ritual could consist of something as simple as greeting someone in any language and seeing their response. If they don't speak that language or prefer not to speak that language with you, then they will reply in another language, and that would be your cue to continue in that language. Sometimes it is a more active request on their part, where they specifically ask for their language of choice. Sometimes it is the patient checking with you, the doctor, which language you prefer because they are polylingual and therefore have no specific preference, but they want to be polite to you and give you the choice of language. Sometimes they decide what language they want, even when they are polylingual, and that's it. You have to stick to their choice. I have some predominantly German-speaking patients who insist on speaking only French with me, even though when they come accompanied by their spouse, they speak German between themselves. And when I join in, they still reply to me in French and back to the spouse in German. This really amuses me, this language fluidity. And I see it everywhere in Switzerland, also in Belgium, where French is spoken alongside Flemish, which is a similar language to Dutch. And both of these languages are Germanic, of course. I I even see people automatically switch language just sitting in a train when the language of the area changes, usually with a small distraction, like someone entering the train and asking you for the time in the language of the area. And then you subconsciously start thinking in that language, and you end up carrying on your conversation in that language. It's funny to watch because the people doing it don't even realize it is happening. This language negotiation ritual that occurs in the initial meeting of people is very important in the doctor-patient relationship, because the language you pick to speak to a patient in is one of your identity markers for that patient. If you meet that patient in the street, in the supermarket, out and about in town, you may forget their name, and they'll forgive you for that, no problem. But forgetting the language you usually speak with them is a clanger. It shows you don't remember them. Occasionally, something else saves your hide. A little background. Most foreign couples in a polylingual canton or city will split the language burden to diversify the languages of the home for the benefit of the kids. I see this most in Eastern European families. If father learns German and mother learns French, the children grow up bilingual. That means better job opportunities. So, if forgetful Askadoc meets both husband and wife in town and can't remember which language she speaks with husband or wife, it doesn't matter. Askadoc can start speaking anyway, and whoever of the couple speaks that language will answer first. Sometimes, of course, it is the patient who forgets what language they usually communicate with you in, and it is they who slip up and address you in the wrong language. I sometimes tease them and say, we spoke French last time. You want to continue in German now? Or vice versa. And they have the choice to continue in the new language or revert back to the old, as they wish. Sometimes this is because when I first meet them, they are new in Switzerland and are actively learning a new language, in which case they change the language to the new language that they are now proficient in at whatever time point they wish. Being a GP, of course, my relationship with patients is years long, as opposed to many specialists who see patients over a short term or, if long term, in a kind of staccato basis, intermittently. This language switch happens a lot with the younger English-speaking international patients. So not necessarily from an English-speaking country. We just use English as a lingua franca because I don't speak their language of origin. This is especially true of Italian-speaking patients from actual Italy, and not the Italian-speaking Swiss patients, who, as you will learn shortly, are the most polylingual of all Swiss people. A slightly controversial issue in Switzerland is that the French speakers are, generally speaking, the least likely to learn the other languages. I repeat, generally speaking. The bi- or trilingual people usually are German or Italian speakers. There are political reasons for this. Switzerland is majority German speaking, as I have already explained earlier in this video. Bear in mind that German is a broad term in this sense. German includes Swiss German, which is a completely different language to the German spoken in Germany, Austria, Liechtenstein, which we typically describe as, for want of a better term, High German. Swiss German is unrecognizable to High German speakers. They are so different. And even different dialects of Swiss German are not similar to each other. This is why German as an official language in Switzerland is not further categorized. It's enough if you speak any German, High German or Swiss German, Oh, by the way, never describe Swiss German as Low German. It causes offense to the Swiss. Just a heads up in case you find yourself in Switzerland one day. Swiss German is the language you speak with your family at home, and High German is the version of German you would learn at school or speak in the office with a client. Unfortunately, history dictates that a certain event between 1939 and 1945 caused a lot of Swiss people to be rather anti-German. So the motivation to learn and keep High German as a preferred language tanked. In a rebellious move against Germany, some Swiss German speakers in bilingual cantons like Bern would rather learn French than High German as a second language at school. And this is why they would rather speak French to me, a foreigner, and not the expected High German they expect me to speak. If I try for long enough to speak Swiss German to them, I get accepted into the Swiss German inner circle. And yes, there is the rather bizarre phenomenon of Swiss German speaking people who don't speak actual High German or normal German. Again, amusing and confusing at the same time. The Italian-speaking Swiss have their own language battles to fight. There are no universities in the Italian-speaking parts of Switzerland, certainly no medical school. I'm not sure why this is so, but this means that the Italian-speaking kids who wish to go into higher education must become at least bilingual, often trilingual, in order to continue their education. They just get on with it and learn either French, German, any version of this, or both French and German. In addition to English, you would expect them to get bitter about this, right? Not so. They just get on with it. They never complain. They just do it. It is the French speakers who are precious about language in Switzerland, according to general public opinion. If, God forbid, in a French-German bilingual canton, and there are two of them, including Bern, a public sign is displayed only in German, the next day the French-speaking language police will be there to cause a ruckus. In my own practice, I tread on eggshells the most with the French-speaking patients when it comes to language, from bitter experience. When I had, for short periods, predominantly German-speaking assistants, the loudest complaints came from the French speakers. When I had predominantly French-speaking assistants, the German speakers took it as an opportunity to brush up their French, and the Italians didn't care either way. Naturally, outside of my language interaction with the patient is the wider network of medical insurances, which are legion in Switzerland, hospitals, specialists, physios, nutritionists, carers, patient support groups, and so on. All of these organizations collude with each other to prioritize the patient's own language in their correspondence with each other and with the patient. When in a polylingual canton, you fill in an insurance form, you commit to a language, of course. The insurance picks up on this, and any correspondence with your doctor will mostly be in that language. It is rare that the language of the doctor is prioritized over the language of the patient. Sometimes I even get correspondence in both languages, in my case French and German, from the hospital or the insurance. Patients have the right to request sick notes and medical reports in their own language from their doctor. This can often turn into a language minefield where you are constantly translating in your head from one language to another. Let's give a, well, maybe not typical, but certainly possible example. A German speaker who works in a firm in a French-speaking area requests a medical report in English because they are going to Canada on a business trip to the firm's headquarters. I take notes during the consultation in German, but the paperwork are all in French, and I speak to the patient in German. And yes, you got it. His accompanying wife is Italian speaking, and for fun and giggles, she insists on speaking to me in Italian. The beauty of different languages is that it also means different cultures. The German speakers, as expected, are, as a group, culturally Germanic-like in demeanor, if such a thing exists. And similarly, the French and Italian speakers are culturally close to the French and Italian cultures, although simultaneously there is such a thing as a Swiss identity. What I find amazing, but I shouldn't do, is that just speaking a language subconsciously draws you into its culture, its accompanying culture and customs. I know, for example, that I get more animated and gesticulate more with my hands when I speak Italian, and I'm a bit straight-laced, shall we say, when I speak German, just because I'm perhaps mirroring the actions of the people with whom I'm speaking. Following on from my last video, this is one way to identify with, and for want of a better word, bond with patients. In the English-speaking world, I didn't have this extra way to sync, SYNC, with a patient, because language-wise we were rather monochrome, so to speak. I love polylingual medicine for this because it gives me another way to connect with my patients in a way that is meaningful to them. What's even more fun is when we decide to play it by ear and just mix languages as we wish. And this is commonly done in the example where spouses within a coupling each master a language and they both come together for a consultation, and perhaps also an elderly parent coming with an adult child who speaks a different language from them. This mix and match of languages livens up consultations. For me, at least, I hope also for my patients. It's never a boring day at work for this reason alone. Health matters are challenging enough. I think polylingual medicine offers a refreshing way out of the monotony of medicine. So I enjoy it, and hopefully so do my patients. Are you in a country or area where polylingual medicine is a thing? How does it affect your experience with healthcare professionals? Does it enhance or hinder it? Do you think all healthcare providers should learn at least one other language other than their mother tongue? I would love your thoughts on this one. Bonus points to you if you write to me in any language of Switzerland in the comment section. Perhaps minus the Romanche bit. Thank you very much. Whatever you do, stay healthy and feel free to ask a doc.